Good morning. Welcome back to the Light on Suitability podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Comeau, with co-host Joe Haytas, my good friend.
Hello.
And apologies, many apologies for all of the missed shows to all the, say, I don't know, a couple dozen. I'm being generous. I think there's maybe a dozen people that tune in after the fact. We just had one thing after another. But I do, after losing an older dog, a younger dog, and then a dog getting sick, I really have developed a lot more empathy for my clients in prison who have no place to go to process grief and mourn. So really has been, I don't know that I needed this lesson, but it has been that lesson for me. And that's how life goes, I guess. I'm not really too sure why it had to happen, but it did. And like I said, it has really opened my eyes to when we hear from our clients that say, why'd you relapse? Because my mom died, my son died, sister, I've had my mom and dad die all in the same month and all this stuff. And you're just like, yeah, but why did you relapse? And believe you, that was one of the options that I have considered, at least initially, and I have complete, like I said, empathy and understanding of why the pain is, I don't know what it is about these pets too. It's not like they're people, but still they're just, I don't know, they're with us every day. You have a dog, Joe, so you know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
And God bless, much gratitude for all the people that I've been able to call in reaching out and being able to just talk about all the irrational stuff that goes on in your brain. And so for any family members out there, remind your loved ones to don't isolate, don't just think you can handle it, or don't push it out either. I didn't push it out. I went with the grief. I played all kinds of sad songs. I'm still playing sads, and I just go with it. And I feel him when I just feel like missing him, I was like, yes, I'm just going to go with it. And it has helped. I have not relied on drugs and alcohol, but I did cheat. I did get a new puppy. So replacement therapy is something that's available to, if you read the big book, so you replace stuff. And that's why a lot of drinkers and people that are recovering from drug addiction do rely heavily on coffee, Red Bulls, cigarettes, and why begrudge them of that at all? Because it certainly is a useful coping mechanism. So nip one in the bud and then nip another. But how has your month been? That's primarily why we've missed about 3 weeks. Joe missed one. He had some thing he needed to get done. And other than that, what's been going on? Any good news from the parole hearing front?
Yeah, I had a series of hearings this week. I got one. Well, I didn't get it. The incarcerated person received one grant, and he's worked really hard, and I was really happy for him and proud of him. He worked really hard, and he came in and he presented himself very well.
Very cool. And now you get to do an en banc hearing.
A good chance of it, sure.
It's I don't know, the governor's just on a tear. So, okay, I've got another 2 this month, possibly 3. Actually, I haven't. My deadline for one guy is today. I believe the governor has the benefit of the civil code of procedure where, the code 12A or whatever, it says if the day falls on a Sunday, the deadline to finish it is Monday or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think he's has that rule available to him. So I have one more guy waiting. The governor's already reversed him once, so I suspect
Oh,
this will be an en banc referral. So I'll have 3 en bancs. Again, this will be 3 months in a row with 3.
oh my gosh.
So getting lots of grants, which means I have to talk to the governor in 5 months about the problems, or the governor's agents, which are the commissioners.
Yeah, you got to
So
follow it up. But well, hey, at least you're getting the grants, so that's. It sounds like you have a good grant rate.
I have an okay grant rate. You know how it is. It comes in waves. I have the 30%
Exactly.
grant rate, just like everybody else, except when I have a lot of SATF, and for whatever SATF is really struggling with programs and things like that. So yeah, back to the episode. This is for anybody new. This is where we delve into the critical aspects of the parole suitability process. And Joe and I have a mission to provide valuable information and practical advice to help family members help their loved ones navigate the journey toward being found suitable for parole. And, there's a lot of information for everybody. My husband tells me, there's a lot of good information. You guys talk about overlapping information a lot. And so he also notices that as a useful, whatever I'm trying to say. I do
Okay.
apologize to the audience. I'm still a little raw, but I am trying to get back in the swing of things. All of my work has suffered a lot
Uh,
because of this.
yeah,
So
life happens when you're doing something else.
you know what? It's so weird, Joe. Like everything was ripping along. Like I was having year,
Yeah.
a wonderful year. And the other problem with that dog was he was just one of those dogs. Like I don't want to diminish the other dogs. They're wonderful. All dogs are wonderful when they're your
Hmm.
dogs.
Yeah.
He just he loved me a
Mm,
lot. Like, and I knew it, and I loved him a lot, and everybody knew it. And I was like, well,
mm.
I would tease. I don't know if this is appropriate, but I was like, well, I think the governor would agree if we could get married.
Right.
But no, he was like my boy. And
Yeah.
I used to call him Pinocchio. He was kind of a bit of a troublemaker, but I would always say that I always ask
Hmm.
him, tell him my goofy little thing. You want to be a real boy? And just all this stuff. It does help. I went to a grief counseling webinar last week.
Oh,
It was a
yeah.
free service provided by these very wonderful people. They were very wonderful. My friend
Hmm.
Michelle, who has been on this show many, many times, she went through a big loss last year. I reached out to her. She walked me through it all over again. And just a matter of listening, called another friend. She just said, I know there's nothing I can say, but go ahead and, just talk, 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 talk. And it
Yeah.
just really helps to have supportive people that will just say, that really sucks. And somebody to empathize with what's going on and just be able to say, wow, that sucks. And I
Mm,
remember when my dog died, and yeah, I know what you're going through. And that's just what that's all about. And,
mhm,
um, I know I'm going on this. I'm still sorry, everyone. You're joining me in my journey of grieving, but we are going to get to Joe's book. We're getting back to it. Chapter Strategy 6. Is that correct, Joe?
I was trying. I believe so. Yes. Mhm.
Okay. And Joe is now an esteemed author of this wonderful book in second edition and working on the edition. He's also working on another book. And he is not an expert, not specialized, but this is pretty much all he does. And he's got more than a decade, right, of this. You've been doing this since 2009, so like 15 years he's been doing this, maybe even more. And when he first started, there was no real resource like this that of his book that had everything available to so that somebody could get their hands on and have it sent to them in the prison. And this book is instrumental in helping your loved ones prepare for their parole hearings. So think about sending that book. It is an excellent guide. And Joe definitely has a deep understanding of the parole process, as you would see in reading his book. So, and he loves this work, as do I. And so we've already done the first 5 topics, which covered the first and foremost thing is thinking free, and then getting I think we stopped doing crimes in prison, getting educated, controlling your anger, and leaving gangs. So today we're on chapter 6, which I think he called self-discovery. And this strategy is crucial for your loved ones to understand their past behaviors, recognizing character defects, developing a positive path forward, triggers, etc., etc., etc. But I want Joe to tell me, kind of give me your thoughts. You've put this as a strategy 6. It follows anger management. What's important here for everyone to know?
Well, it's about exploring your past, and if I can say this, like asking yourself lots of questions, including where did the train come off the tracks, and what moved you to do that? Was it something, some trauma in your life, or meeting an unfulfilled need, like acceptance? What was it about you? And it's important to go back and explore your early life. What was your relationship with your parents, your friends, teachers, and other people in the community? Who did you look up to? Who did you want to impress? And what were some of the things you did to get fulfilled, if you will? And I use that term in quotes, but fulfilled in a negative way. So it's looking back and what led up to whatever terrible thing you did to get you into prison. Things don't happen in a vacuum, and things evolve over time and push you in the wrong direction, and that leads up to something horrendous where there's victims and suffering and pain, and you don't come to prison for no reason at all. Obviously, unless you're convicted of something you didn't do, and that happens, but it doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen.
Yeah, it doesn't happen all the time. It happens more rarely than I thought when I first started doing this job, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But it does
Yeah.
happen, and that's unfortunate. Yeah, very important. Very important. Why is this so critical for someone who's trying to get paroled? Why is this so critical to know this self-discovery journey?
Well, it's critical because if you don't know what led you in that direction, you're not going to be able to address it.
Address it where?
Well, address it, first of all, in yourself, and then going to groups, self-help, speaking with, if it's appropriate, with mental health experts, reading books, just learning everything you can about the way you were, and then going forward and changing who you were, to go about the change. Change is so important, and you have to change, and then you have to show the change and how you changed.
What is this? What is the significance of this self-discovery process in terms of the context of the parole suitability hearing itself?
Well, the context is to show what you've learned and how you've applied it to your life, which is called the internalization of the concepts. In other words, everybody is a creature of habit. We all kind of go off of our subconscious in our daily life and do what our default mode, if you will, our habits. So we have to think differently. We have to erase the past way of thinking and replace it with a new default mode of behavior, so that we act differently, and we do it automatically, but in a positive way this time, instead of the negative ways of the past, of criminal thinking that brought somebody to prison. It's getting a new default mode, a new way of acting, a new moral compass. And not only that, but doing the right things, making amends, trying to help others, and just having that attitude every day.
In your book, this chapter actually has a ton of sample questions that would be asked at the parole hearing, and you emphasize the importance of inmates anticipating questions they might face during parole hearings. And how would you advise them to use these questions to prepare for their hearings?
Well, that's a great question. One way is to take the question and write down your best answer to write. And I say that because when you write, it slows down the brain and you can think and hopefully
Interesting. So
connect.
journaling is important. I know a lot of commissioners
Absolutely.
recommend journaling, and
Mhm.
that goes hand in hand with what you just described, why it's so important to write stuff.
Right. And I have incarcerated persons. I tell them if it's a subsequent hearing, I ask them to take questions from the transcript of their previous hearing and write down the answers of how you would answer today, and then compare that to how you answered at the hearing, and just compare it and try to gauge what you've learned since the hearing, because we're all changing. It's like a remorse letter. You just don't do it once. That remorse letter from 3 years ago, you've learned new things. You've identified maybe with new feelings. You've grown. So take another effort at writing another remorse letter and see how it is today, and compare it to the one from 3 years ago, and you can maybe gauge some growth, and how you've changed. So that's
I had a
one way of
question.
doing it.
I had a question, and then it flew out of my brain. But
That's okay.
the other thing,
Another
go
way
ahead.
is talking it out with, and obviously if you're in prison, you have to be dealing with people you trust. You just can't be anybody. But whether it's a staff member, psychologist, close friend, or perhaps even in your self-help group, a facilitator, you can talk about things of the past too, and maybe get different insights from different people and different points of view. So in addition to writing it, speaking it, with other people.
So what about role playing, rehearsing answers, and things like that?
That's a great way. There's something called psychodrama, where you go back and you enact different events. I believe that's what you're talking about, even if you're not calling it that. But role playing is an excellent way, like to go back and to role play even a trauma, and reversing roles. And that's difficult stuff. And hopefully you would have a professional to help with that. But, in the environments that our clients are in, that's not always a very easy thing. But role
Yeah.
playing, that is an excellent method.
Going back a little bit to what you were talking about, you were explaining that some of your questions ask about childhood experiences all the way through the criminal history and that sort of thing. And in terms of the significance of those childhood experiences and how they contributed to the overall, I guess, crime, eventually the crime itself. But how do these types of questions and how does this self-discovery, family background, and so on help our clients understand their behaviors, character defects, triggers, and so on?
Well, because they learn about themselves, about who they were, and okay, when it comes down to is why did you do something that you know that was wrong, but you continue to do it? So there had to be something inside of you that pushed you forward, that was more important, for lack of a better term, uh, more significant, that compelled you to do something that you knew that was wrong, to either fulfill a need or to get something. It goes obviously beyond the actions of the crime, because where the mind goes, the body follows, and that's why it's important uh, for this discovery, because when you realize what it was that compelled you to do something, uh, you can change your behavior so you don't repeat this thing in the future. And yeah, you may not even repeat it, but uh, there are other things that are maybe smaller that you could repeat. So you want to address those things so that you can go out and, I guess in layman's terms, live a normal life,
Mhm.
non-criminal, where you go to work, pay
And
tax.
how normal, right? Because most of the family members viewing this, and this isn't meant to be insulting, but most of my clients say, I've engaged in this huge self-discovery process, but I'm getting out here, and the majority of my family member have not. The majority of society, I notice, have not. They have no coping strategies. They don't know what their triggers are. If they do, they don't, have a warning system like we've been taught to. They don't know how their childhood adverse experiences have rewired their brain or
Mhm.
wired your brain, sorry, in a manner in which, like you said, the mind goes, the body follows. And that is an extremely important topic because, in particular, the body keeps the score, which I recommend that my clients read when they're struggling to figure out the connections between and connecting dots between adverse childhood experiences and the actions they take. That book is exactly just what you said. And I
Can
don't
you
know.
please repeat the title of that?
Yeah, The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel. All of a sudden, the name is escaped. Bessel van der Kolk.
Sure.
Bessel van der Kolk. I think
The
he's
body keeps the score. That's a
in
great
Dutch.
title.
It's a very a seminal work or whatever you call it,
Hmm.
a very important book. Most of the clients who can read it, it is a little bit more advanced. There's not necessarily anything awareness. There's a ton of awareness that you can get from that book just to go, okay, wait a second. I am not completely crazy, because what happens is lots of us have abusive parents and we manifest that in a behavior like you're saying, mind, where the mind goes, the body follows. So where does your mind go? Well, a child that has either more resiliency built into his overall God-given makeup versus perhaps an intervening positive force in his life, a coach, a teacher that recognizes their struggles. The rest of us kind of, we end up coping with our negative childhood experience, those childhood adverse experiences. They're called ACE, adverse childhood events or experiences.
Mhm.
ACE, it's the new model. That's dictating for a large portion of the population how you are going to respond. Are you going to respond by numbing out? Okay, alcohol, drugs. Are you going to respond by engaging in prostitution, attracting negative partnerships, joining the military? Joining the military. I mean, the military is extremely violent, um, government sanctioned violent operation. Not to be politically incorrect, but let's face it, that's the military. A lot of people have to do violent things, so they're just doing violence lawfully and they under the order of someone. So maybe they found structure there. I'm not saying this is absolutely true, but you can talk to a lot of veterans and they'll tell you that I can bring a veteran on here and he or she will be able to explain that a lot better than I am doing right now. But how else do we cope? We cope by committing crimes. We develop antisocial personality disorders. We develop narcissistic personality disorders. Those are all coping mechanisms. We develop pedophilic disorders, paraphilic disorders, antisocial personality, I think I just mentioned. So, you're dealing with it that way. You're dealing with it, violence, gangs, crimes, whatever the pattern is that you saw in life, because we're looking at, you've got a parent that abuses all four kids the same way. One went to prison or two went to prison. The other two don't go to prison. Okay, why is that? Because I always tell my clients, why did this crime occur? So ultimately, this chapter is about helping our clients figure out, why did this crime occur? And I say, what happened on the day of the life crime? Well, I shot at a group of rival gang members. Okay, that's the what. What's the why? Oh, well, my dad, he was mean to me. I go, that's not the why. That's the how you became who you became, but that's not the full why. But the
Yeah.
other thing is to recognize that it is either lack of resilience, lack of intervening force to come in and show you that this is not the way it has to be, for you to not go off and engage in some addictive behavior. Addiction meaning drugs, alcohol, porn, prostitution, crime, gangs,
Mhm.
whatever your addiction is.
Yes.
That's the coping strategy. And then the self-discovery process in prison helps you figure out what the new coping strategy is to replace the default coping strategy, which is all the negative addictions, which are always going to be there when you learn
Mhm.
through the self-discovery process. Not only alcohol, relapsing into negative peer groups or a gang, and for the gangs or
Mhm.
negative peer groups. Okay, relapsing back into your old coping strategy for, I don't have any money, I don't have a place to live. Okay, what do? I'll
Yeah.
do the first thing that I know best, right? Hold up the liquor store, or oh, the wife. Okay, I learned how to not solve problems in relationships with violence. Again, a huge topic, but um, violence isn't necessarily just physical. And then, and not to, our brains are going to make us, our egos,
Mhm.
the ego mind. Ego doesn't mean arrogance. It just means, ego means I'm not acting in a loving manner. I'm not acting in a kind manner. I'm not acting in a humble manner. I'm always right. You're always wrong. You're always offending me. Don't tell me what to do. That sort of ego stuff, like all ego stuff. Anything that's fear based, not love based, is all ego based. And then you bring that into a relationship. That relationship is going to expose your character defects really fast. And that's the other issue. That's the other thing you'll learn. And Joe talks about this in his chapter about character defects. And that is The character defects that you had then, you have them now. Okay? Because you're always the alcoholic, for lack of a better word, but the character defects are there, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And that step one is the admitting. I admit that I am powerless over ultimately my character defects, and that I have to stay super vigilant about staying on top of. I am an angry person. Me, I have a short fuse. I have to watch it all day long. So I have to, with my clients, with my husband, not, a lot of people I can just, I'm not going to lose my temper with, but mostly that, my clients, when they don't listen. But no, I can have a bad temper. So I have to, it's not going to go away. You look at me at 12 years old and you look at me today, I have that as a potential relapse every single day. So you need to be super vigilant and go, okay, what are my coping strategies for lack of bad temper? Number one, like we talked about before, meditation. So how do you preemptively prevent it? Meditation. Okay, when my meditation practice goes away, which it has lately, because I have a puppy that wants to get up every 2 hours, and he seems to be a little bit of a night owl. And so no sleep is not good for me. So no sleep, no meditation. I'm exercising because I'm following him around everywhere, but that's good too. But what about when I lose my temper? I'm like, I'm about to blow. Now what? You've got to have this stuff ready. And if you're not going to know your coping strategies unless you know, and you're able to know the warning signs, know what's going to trigger you, know it's a high risk situation for you before all that. Because otherwise, if you don't have that, if you haven't performed that self-discovery to figure all that stuff out, you're not going to be able to then take it to the next step and go, okay, coping strategies right now. I need to put something into place right now. And so that's all that. I don't know how I got off on that tangent, but I did.
No, that was good. That was some good, well, for lack of a better term, that was great insight into.
Yeah, insight is a great word. That's probably why they used it. They, culturally appropriated the word insight. Now we can't use it without it being. What about difficult questions, Joe? There's some tough questions. I look at those questions sometimes and go, I don't know, how would I answer that question? Like for all of my different struggles and things. So what advice do you give them if they can't get past a difficult question, if they can't connect that dot, if they can't put their finger on the character defect that was in play in a certain type of event?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Well, different things work for different people, whereas writing something down might work for someone. Talking to somebody might be better for them. Also, going back as far as they can. Maybe there's some trauma deeply hidden in the recesses of their brain that were so terrible that they haven't even looked at it or thought about it. As I do this stuff, there's been a few things about my past too that I've discovered that I had suppressed some trauma. So keep trying. I mean, if you're not searching, you're not going to find anything. So just keep searching, be persistent, and keep asking yourself questions. I think there's a lot of power in asking questions to yourself, and we don't always come up with the answers right away. One good technique I think is to ask yourself the question before you go to sleep, and your subconscious will be working on it while you sleep. Sometimes we wake up in the middle of the night with that aha moment, or the next day with that aha moment. And that's another way of doing it. There's different techniques.
That's a really good tool. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really good tool.
To keep searching, keep asking yourself questions. That's I think that's the key.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I don't know whoever said that, but the unexamined life is a life not
Oh,
worth living or something. I don't remember but that's
yeah.
what this is all about. And a lot of us can tend to, I know a lot of people that engage in what I've learned is a concept called spiritual bypassing. And all you do there is what you do in spiritual bypassing. And I might screw this up, but instead of looking at what's hard, you just skip that and then you code over it and say, "Oh no, life is rosy." And you never really examine it at all. And you just say, "No, everything's great. Everything's great. I'm a Buddhist now, so everything's great." Or
Oh,
I did this one, I listened to this one super guru and she taught this, that, and the next thing. And now everything's great. There's no problems. I don't have to feel, I don't have to, you know, uh, feel bad. I'm not going to feel bad. I'm just going to put that whitewash, whitewash. I think they call it purple washing, but I don't know what spiritual bypassing. So it's just like, don't have to do the hard work to look at yourself and say, no, there's some flaws here and I could improve on those flaws. And, in the course, A Course in Miracles as well
oh yeah.
teaches. I haven't read that book because it's extremely difficult, but I am studying people that study it. Marianne Williamson, I think is her name. Brilliant, brilliant lady on
Hmm.
this book. Her understanding of this book is phenomenal. And she's just like, that's the whole point. That's what we're here to do. So really just sit down and unpack it. I think one of the ways you can do that is timelines. Timelines for some people have been eye-opening, and you just start from as far back as you can remember, and then you
Hmm.
just go forward. 5 years old, mom bought me a bike. How did that make you feel? Because I'm back to that feeling again, right? A lot
Yeah.
of people don't know how to feel, and they only have one feeling. Again, if you're a spiritual bypasser, the one feeling is everything's great. If you're a spiritual bypasser or not, something opposite, everything's negative.
Hmm.
Everything's negative. Instead of, there's all kinds of different flavors and stuff. And to have that journey, be on that journey is really the only way. It's the only path to enlightenment, is to unpack all of it. Because if you don't unpack all of it in this lifetime, some philosophies, religions, ways of looking at the world, near death experience experts, what will say,
Hmm. Yeah.
you are going to come back and do it until you do realize that you are not this body, you are not your mind, you are a soul, you are a spirit, and
Hmm.
you have to, and we're all connected like the ocean.
Yeah.
Okay,
And with
I
that thought, go
I'm
ahead.
go for it. No, you
With
go.
that thought, let me ask a question. Are we humans in our body having a spiritual experience, or are we spirits having a human experience?
You know, Everyone will say it in their own way, but we are just not. This body is
Hmm.
it's the tool that we have to be able to manifest our soul's
Hmm.
journey. We have to journey somehow. If you believe in the law of one, they say, sorry to get onto this esoteric stuff, but it's all
No,
self.
this is great. I think we should form a new religion, Elizabeth.
Well, there people have already done it, but would they say, the only reason I know some of this, because I've been grasping through the mourning process and the grieving and mourning. I've
Hmm.
been just
Yeah.
desperate for whatever answers would comfort me. And so I was reading this stuff on the law of one, and the law of one says is a channeled entity in the fifth dimension that says, we're in the third dimension. Our pets, by the way, are in the second dimension, trying to graduate to the third dimension, but we're in the third dimension. which is we're here to learn. We'll be in the third dimension until we can master our heart chakra. Once we master the heart, most of us live in the bottom three chakras, I guess. And then there's this heart chakra. And when you can be in your heart chakra, you can do everything from a place of love. You can skip all the ego stuff that we all do, which is basically the mind. The mind loves to just overlay on top of the soul's journey and go, no, you don't need that journey. You need to do this. You need to think that you suck. You need to think that you don't look good enough. You need to think that you're not smart enough. You need to get angry. You need to respond to that criticism in that way. If someone says something to you, you need to react. You need to be defensive. You need to be critical. You need to be all this ego stuff. Okay, that's all ego. Anything that's not loving, meaning kind, humble, kind and humble, basically, is everything else is for your ego. And that's how you get trapped in committing crimes as well. And that's why they say you're also not the last deed you commit or whatever. You're not defined by the worst thing you've done or whatever. And that's hard. The ego will tell you that's also not true. Okay. And we're all just, most of us, I don't know anybody, not one person who is not acting from a place of fear. And that fear, I don't mean like, there's a spider. I don't mean that kind of fear, but a lack of love and driven by ego desires of the mind. The mind.
Yes.
Mind loves to derail our journey of enlightenment. So once we get past the heart chakra, then you go to the throat chakra and you can start to express that, and you're sort of moving into this fourth dimension type of thing. And then from the fourth dimension you want to go to the fifth dimension, I guess, and then you're done. You don't have to come back to this prison planet anymore. And once you figure out what it really is, you don't want to. So I've sort of derailed the show into this
Not at all
esoteric thing, but it
No.
can help you. Like you said, mindset is everything, right? And that's your first chapter. And that is, if you have the majority of our clients, I find, that have some kind of belief in the supernatural, be that Christianity, ritualistic practices of the Islam faith, being a Muslim, practicing Islam.
Yeah, let's just call it Middle Eastern religions.
I just screw that up. Hindu, whatever you want, Buddhism, something outside of yourself, some higher power, if they tap into it, they really have a strong chance of being found suitable, because all of those practices require humility. And once you gain humility, you no longer need to be right. You no longer need to defend your position. You no longer need to make the other person wrong. You no longer need to think the officer's out to get me. Even if that officer is maybe out to get me, probably not, probably just having a bad day, more than likely, or just recognizing that the officer has a lot of growing to do and probably just stay out of his way, rather than needing to vindicate yourself or, get involved, not mind your own business and things. All those inmates that do that kind of thing, I find, are the most successful. I bet you 90% of my clients with some belief in the supernatural or a higher power will be found suitable and have been found suitable.
Yes, absolutely. And the spirituality, that is something that, we can know. We got to know the words and the music. Just knowing the words without the feeling, without the rhythm, it'll only get you so far. You got to have the feeling too. You got to know the beat, the rhythm to the words. And then that's putting it together. And I think that's what you're saying there. And you're spot on, Elizabeth.
And beyond all of this, you've got to not only be granted parole, survive the review process, but you have to be a good person on parole, or else you're going to be revoked. And then beyond parole, you definitely want to stay vigilant because your loved ones, anyway, because more than likely been diagnosed with an antisocial personality disorder. And the top 3 things with antisocial personality are your default coping strategy is to disregard the rights of others, commit crimes, lie about it, and have a lack of empathy for your fellow human being. And if
Yeah.
times get tough, things happen, your mind is wired to go there. It's like a dog, okay? A domesticated dog. If you leave, or maybe a pig, let's do pigs. I know pigs.
Okay.
Dogs take longer, but if you take that pig, nobody's loved one is a pig. I have hogs on my farm, so I just see how they relate. But if
Sure.
I took one of my hogs and set him loose, he would become undomesticated very quickly. He would revert back to his natural God-given nature very fast.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and he can make it. Dogs, they have different kind of, so that's why I got away from the dogs, because it's not exactly. But if you leave a bunch of dogs, an interesting thing I learned from studying dog breeding. I know I'm off on all kinds of tangents, people, and I'm sorry. But the dog breeding, if you take a dog, let's take a bunch of dogs, your dog, my
Okay.
dog, a
Yeah.
bulldog, a so-and-so dog, a whole bunch of dogs, and you just leave them to their own devices to mate and feed themselves. And let's just say there's a food source available of some kind, rodents and rabbits and whatever, okay?
Mm-hmm.
They will slowly over time all look the same.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that explains a lot. Like I've gone to Thailand, I'm like, man, these dogs all look the same. But yeah, but the point is, when you have a disorder, antisocial personality disorder, that you will have to learn, your loved one will have to learn about through the self-discovery process, you know that it never goes away. It's always there waiting to return instantly the minute you let your guard down, the minute you
Mm-hmm.
become complacent. So that's why I was saying, now I remember, you need to be the person that leaves prison. That needs to be who you're striving to remain beyond discharge of parole. Like you're just leaving all that behind because you're constantly ready, just like an alcoholic, to pounce if you see some of the wheels coming off. If you see the little nugget coming off, what do you call it? Not a nugget, but the little tire, and you got the little lug nut.
There you go. There you go.
It was something
Sure.
if you see the lug nut coming off, you in particular, your loved one in particular, has to be vigilant. You and I could
Mm-hmm.
probably drive down the road a little while with one lug nut off, but your loved ones cannot. You have to say that lug nut has come off. That's a warning sign that the tire is in jeopardy of coming off. Okay.
Yes.
And so when the wheels come off, you're going to be returned to prison. So you need to stay super vigilant about that. And that's why it's best that you become the person who you want to be when you're discharged from parole, not just to get a grant of parole.
Oh, absolutely. That is so important. I mean, that's the key. And that's why being self-aware and learning to be self-aware all the time is so important. I say self-aware, you say vigilant, but I think we're
Yeah,
talking about the same thing there.
same thing. Yeah,
Hmm.
same thing. Totally the same thing.
Yes.
So, what else, Joe? Anything else? Finals? You want to sum it up? Give me your best wrap up.
Well, it starts with making a decision to change and looking into yourself and being brutally honest, not covering anything up because everything that's happened happened. So why why dismiss it? And it takes work, it takes effort, and it takes acknowledgement. Say, hey, that was me. I mean, I don't like that person who I was, but that means I got to change. I got to do something different. And Elizabeth, you and I understand prison is not the easiest place in the world to make a change for the positive, quite the opposite. So that's why you really have to have that desire. But that desire also translates into getting a grant of parole. And that is so important because
That's a
that's
goal.
everybody's objective, to get out into the world and
Yeah,
to be able to use our positive attributes, no longer our negative attributes, to do
right.
something good for the world, to have a purpose and find that purpose. And I think that will help a lot, an extreme amount in making that change permanent.
And just, with the steps, another thing, most of my clients who get grants of parole have worked the steps. They didn't memorize the
Hmm.
steps, they worked the steps. And they're really key to understanding all of this. They're really, really key. And so please urge your loved ones to get serious about the 12 steps, get them a workbook on the 12 steps, and get them a sponsor, or encourage them to get a sponsor. You shouldn't be doing anything other than sending the workbook in, because that's obviously extremely helpful to them in that on that level. But um, again, Joe, so great to see you. Thank you for joining me again. Thank you for your wonderful book.
Hmm.
And what about the next topic? Any ideas? Do you recall what the next one is?
Yes, I had it here actually.
You can cheat.
Okay.
I have it too. I have mine under my pile of files here.
You know, the next two coming up are to know your character defects,
Oh, okay.
identify them. And then after that, know and work the 12 steps, which you're just saying. So it all works together.
I'm thinking we should do you want to do it together, or you want to break it out?
We can do it together, of course.
What do you think? It's so important. Character defects is such an important topic. Now there's so much to talk about most of the time, and we've already gone 50 minutes. So you can see how one topic has got so much there to unpack in general. So I will see you next week. I don't have anything that should interfere. Hopefully I've got my positive toad omen at the front door saying everything's going to be just great from here on out.
Mm. Yeah, next week. That would be great. I believe I can do that.
I hope so. And please, if any of the dozen people that might view this video coming this week, please like, subscribe, comment, add your feedback, ask questions. Feel free to get in contact with us at any time. And I will see you. Joe's info is in his book, so order the book. And
It's
we will.
available on Amazon.
Yes, it's available on Amazon. Make sure to get the second edition, that one that
Correct.
looks like the one here on the Joe's little background thing.
And if you have any Spanish speaking friends, it's available in Spanish as well.
Wow, when did that happen?
A little over a year ago.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
I thought I
Oh,
told
that's
you.
fantastic.
I thought you knew.
I thought, in my mind,
Hmm.
I thought you were working on it. I didn't know that it had already been put out. I don't know why I thought that.
No,
I
in fact, an incarcerated person at SATF helped had a big part in doing it.
I
His
knew that. That was amazing. I knew that. That's amazing, Joe.
Yeah, Gilbert Acosta.
Okay, give him credit where credit's due.
Yeah, he did a great job, and he worked on it really hard.
Okay. All right. So we'll see you all next week. Everyone who tuned in, thank you so much for your support. And support your loved ones in this journey. It's a long one, but it's a good one. It's a worthwhile journey.
Absolutely.
Okay. Talk to you later.
All right. Thank you, Elizabeth.